It's a high-tech conversation.
And a low-tech topic.
Live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
So, but that's a perfect example. If there are any questions as we go, I'm very happy to have somebody chime in and get those questions going, because it's a discussion. I don't want to present for, an hour and have everybody bored. So this is a conversation. I'll show a few slides. We'll talk, but I will make fresh paint tonight so everyone can see it and we can actually see real paint going on. But let me get started. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll try to share the right one. Here we go. Okay, and I'm just going to then ask, can everybody see that screen where it's the make fresh milk paint screen?
Yes, it's showing.
Perfect. Okay, so make fresh milk paint. That is kind of my imperative statement. I want people to make paint. I'm not saying you can. I'm not saying if you're curious. It's really, I want everybody to try this. I really believe in this paint so much that I'm obsessed with it. But let's just get started. What is it? Well, it's milk paint. It's paint made from milk. That's pretty straightforward. Milk specifically in the form of casein. So you've separated the whey protein and whatever else you've got in the milk. So you just want that casein or curds protein. Then you want to add hydrated lime, which is kind of builder's lime. It's a common construction material. Pigment to get a color. And water is your solvent. So you thin it with water, you clean it with water. With this in mind, what's important on that ingredient list is that there is 0 VOCs. There's no solvent, it's water. Hydrated lime is caustic, so you are going to have basic precautions to protect your eyes, your airways, your skin, but it's completely safe to use indoors, without any ventilation. But the bigger thing that I guess is really driving my motivation here is paint that we put on our walls, acrylic paint, latex paint. That stuff is plastic. It's just plastic. It's actual acrylic resin plastic. And so if we're slopping plastic all over our walls, all over the furniture that we build, yeah, it's convenient, but that's not the kind of outcome I want. I want just like handmade furniture instead of melamine, pressed IKEA stuff. I want something real. So for me, one of the biggest attractions generally to milk paint is it's something real. It's something natural. But the story of what really got me into fresh milk paint is that here in Europe, it's not that easy to find it. It's a little better, but I'm from Minnesota, but for the past 12 years, I've lived in Austria here. It's getting a little better, but mostly you can't find powdered milk paint. And I'd use the powdered stuff. I think most of us have used the powdered milk paint. It looks nice. It's fairly convenient, but I just couldn't really get it. And I thought, it's supposedly just casein, powdered casein. Well, that's exactly what this stuff is, quark, or Topfen, we say here in Austria. This stuff, every gas station and grocery store sells it here for €1. It's like yogurt, basically. It's a food stuff. So with that in mind, I said, I grew up in a farming family. I know you can powder milk, but it's not the same as milk. You know, you can't take powdered milk and make cheese. You can't take powdered sawdust, you know, and make wood. It changes the consistency. So I picked up a bag of builder's lime, picked up quark, picked up some pigments, and started experimenting, started playing with the ratios and digging into historical recipes and tried to cut out anything complex, to try to get to a point where what's the pure chemistry of it. So, you know, looking at exactly how much lime I would need to convert to where I want, and then going beyond and playing with the recipe. Where that got me pretty quickly was a paint that I almost couldn't believe. And I tried telling everybody I met, hey, you got to make this paint. You won't believe it. Because when we talk about casein, this protein, that's the one we want. It's the primary protein in cow's milk. It's cow's milk protein is, you know, 80% casein, 20% whey, which is like a thin liquid. Casein has a complex structure that is this fancy monster on the screen. What it is it's very hydrophilic on the inside. So the moisture stays on the inside of this cluster of casein micelles. So it's a collection. That's not one single molecule. It's a collection of them. And the outside is hydrophobic. It repels water, which means in normal milk, that's why you have this perfect suspension. Each particle is pushing against the water and it never wants to sink because it doesn't want to move. It's perfectly locked in, and you have that milk is, you know, ideal. Latex, basically. Commercial milk paint takes this beautiful natural structure, and unfortunately, for shelf life and transport, they have to dry it. You can't ship fresh milk around the country, you know, at the hardware store. So you have to dry casein to be able to really sell it, because then you have a shelf life. When you dry casein, this beautiful structure collapses. It falls apart, and then you try to rehydrate it. Casein doesn't like to be rehydrated. It repels water. Adding lime, which commercial milk paints also use, helps. But if you guys have used powdered milk paint, you know the struggle. This stuff just doesn't really like to take water. You mix it up, it kind of eventually, and if you do slow, and if you make a paste, and if you wait overnight, there are tricks. But you're starting from a tough spot. Versus if we make fresh milk paint, and I call it fresh milk paint because we're taking fresh casein in the form of quark here. So if I open this stuff here, what I've got is nice little, it's got liquids. I don't want to tip it or it's going to go on my computer, but it's basically, it's just like a kind of a yogurt, kind of a thick cream cheesy thing. This stuff is sticky. You know, this stuff, if you get wet powdered casein on your hand, it's not really sticky. This stuff is sticky. So when you take this stuff and mix it up, what you will end up with fresh milk paint is basically glue that turns into cement. The adhesion to wood compared to commercial milk paint is, I would say, unbelievable. I mean, it just, because the adhesion is so good, the handling is fantastic. It goes on like acrylic. It basically is the platonic ideal of paint when you try to use it. And the best part is this quark is, in Europe, it's really easily available. In UK, it's available at most grocery stores. US, it's kind of tough to find, but it's available a lot more now than it was a few years ago. It's often marketed as farmer's cheese. If you can't find it, you can just make it in 10 minutes from skim milk and vinegar. But that's this core difference between any milk paint you've used before is that we're using fresh quark. Does anybody so far have any questions about what I covered so far?
No, but I want to point out to you that if you're showing us anything in front of you, we are watching your shared picture, so we're not able to see that.
Perfect. Very good tip. Good. So
We have a question.
Yeah.
From Matthias.
Yep. I was planning. Previous to this presentation, I spent 5 minutes looking at the quark section over in the dairy section at the local supermarket. Is there any preference for the different varieties of fat content?
Great question. Here's my answer. I wouldn't blame you if you use the full fat version. Historically, they tell you to avoid it.
Right.
I suspect, but I don't want to really get people to do something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the simple thing is they always say use skim milk, but skim milk was a byproduct historically, right? It was you'd feed it to pigs. My grandpa always called it barn paint because he says, don't drink that, it's barn paint. You know, it was a byproduct they would throw out. And there's a incredible French author who wrote a treatise on milk paint 200 years ago, and it's basically word for word what I wrote. I plagiarized him without even thinking of it. Maybe I was just possessed, but he's ranting about how good the paint is and how, you know, you can replace these oil-based paints. For me, it's fossil fuel oil. For him, it was linseed oil. But he says, you know, milk is a byproduct of manure production. They actually just wanted the manure for fertilizer, and even milk itself is a byproduct. But by default, skim milk or skim or mager or low-fat quark is what I would recommend.
Right.
On the basis that butter fat is not a stable fat, right? Butter goes rancid. So milk fat, you would expect to go rancid. However, they never had great separation techniques historically, right? You know, 300 years ago, there's always going to be some fat. And if some fat is there, then it's still fat. It should still go rancid. So I've been testing full fat boards, which is 20% fat by dry weight is the advertised fat. Here's my suspected thing, but I'm not a soap maker. The lime is calcium hydroxide. It's pH 12.4, which makes it essentially lye. Instead of being sodium hydroxide, it's calcium hydroxide.
Yeah.
It's turning the fat, it's saponifying it. It's turning the fat in the quark into soap.
Yeah.
That's my suspected outcome. I don't notice much of a difference at all. I just know it'll be hard to sell a second run of the books if everybody's soap or paint goes rancid. So by default, I recommend skim. I don't notice a difference, but let's try to aim for skim. But I think you can use them all. Don't use the ones with chives in them. That's the only variety I wouldn't use. But otherwise, don't be stressed if you can find like low fat, but it's not fat free. Just get whatever you've got.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll go a little further. All right. So once we have the quark, you've done 90% of the work. Next, you just need hydrated lime, calcium hydroxide. So it's normally used for creating mortar. It's used in construction. It's should be sold at most, big box hardware stores. It's very, very cheap. The only problem is they sell it only in 50-pound bags, and you need 1 ounce per batch. So that's that bag will do 800 batches of paint for, I think I paid €6 for my bag. It's very generous. I prefer type S, and I'll go into that a little bit. But you can maybe find smaller packages depending on where you are as pickling lime. So it just has to be calcium hydroxide, or Cal Mexicana, which is hydrated lime. It's used in making it's used for making tortillas. And so if you can find hydrated lime in a smaller bag, go for it. I like the big bag because I have a lifetime supply for $6, but you can get a smaller batch. Lime is caustic. This is the only hazardous part of the paint. You do not want this in your eyes. If you get the powder in your eyes, then you've got to go to the clinic. You've got to rinse your eyes for 15 minutes and call your doctor. I've never had it happen, but I wear eye protection when I have powdered lime. Anton, please.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you have to use powdered lime, or can you use I've got my lime pit in the backyard for lime wash. Can I use this stuff for?
Is it Sumpfkalk or
yeah,
what?
Sumpfkalk, yes.
Yes, Sumpfkalk. What would we call that? That's
quick lime.
No, so quick lime you want to avoid.
Yeah.
Quick lime is calcium oxide.
I'm not sure. Just guessed.
Yeah, sure. Quick lime is before you add water to hydrated lime. It's basically unhydrated lime.
Yeah.
Quick lime is if you can get it, do not get it because it gets really hot. It's really dangerous.
Yeah, it's really dangerous.
Extra caustic. Yeah.
But I started with quick lime and then I hydrated it, and now it's Sumpfkalk in the backyard. Yeah.
So Sumpfkalk is actually great. I can tell you from a fantastic professor, he's been really generous with his time. Professor Rodriguez Navarro is a professor of petrology, which is the formation of new rock, but he's also an expert in lime-based binders. And what he goes into is basically if you have your lime in water, so that's what Sumpfkalk is, where you actually dissolve your lime into water and leave it there. So it's like a paste or a wet pit, exactly.
Yeah, it matures, yeah.
It's actually better. Your lime is going to get a better crystalline structure over time. So you can age it for years and it should make a better lime. But I have to say, my big bag of hardware store lime that I didn't hydrate, that I didn't age in water, works great. So
but
this is just
I can use my ready-made.
Use it. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
You'll have to figure out the ratios a little bit because it's wet, but also the ratios are extremely flexible. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. With this in mind, when you're buying lime, I like type S. And the reason is that type S has magnesium hydroxide in it. It's going to stay caustic for longer. That sounds bad, but what happens is as CO2 from the air combines with water and your lime, it turns your lime into calcium carbonate. It carbonates your lime, and it makes it into basically limestone. So your milk paint actually turns into stone over time, which makes it very durable. It can burnish to a beautiful shine if you want that. But type S lime with that magnesium and that higher pH, it carbonates slower. The magnesium elements take much, much longer to carbonate and neutralize. It keeps a high pH, which inhibits mold and mildew. I have projects that are 5 years old and have been just soaking wet. They're in the bathroom next to the shower. I got small kids. they're fine. I've never had a spot of mildew or anything. So that's why I like type S. And it's also generally type S is usually much finer in structure. It's just kind of the really fine grade lime. Calcitic, kind of standard lime should work just fine as well. So, does anyone have any lime questions? Any more lime questions? Good. The only thing I'd say is the pickling lime, if you find it online, it says the flavor is lime flavored, and technically that's true, but don't taste it. So moving on to pigments, which are the fun part. Pigments are what makes this from kind of a, oh, I guess I could do it like, you know, this way or that way. Pigments transform this into unlimited creative freedom. But also, they're dirt cheap, literally. If I pick up a French ochre, I can't show you because you can't see the camera anyways, but the stuff down there at the bottom, these French ochres are, I think I paid for 900 grams, which will do 30 batches of paint. I think I paid €5 for it because it's literally dirt. It's yellow dirt dug out of the ground. It's incredible price, but it's also really high quality pigment. It has infinite shelf life. And every batch I make with all those pigments, I can start blending them. Every drop of paint I make is unique. So I don't have ever, you know, going on Instagram and seeing, oh, someone has the same taste as me and bought one of the same 16 colors of milk paint commercially available. Nah, I don't think I've ever made the same color twice. I don't think I never write stuff down. I probably can't make the same color twice. But the freedom that you get from these is fantastic. You can just add a few grains of something else to shift it from one way to the other. The only caveat is the high pH of the lime means they have to be suitable for lime use. Oxides are great. Ochres are great. Most synthetic pigments are fine. Prussian blue will turn brown instantly. Even the Shakers knew this and commented on it. But it'll basically say if it's suitable for a high pH. You want a lime suitable one. And there's tons of stores, artist shops that have great selections of pigments. You don't need to go specialized. Just go to your local art supply place, pick up a few things to experiment. You can make your own pigment if you want. You know, the base costs you, $1 or $2. So you can grind up some rust if you want. It's just so much freedom with the pigments.
Yeah, well, I've got in this country 100 grams is like £4.
For pigment.
Yeah, for the French ochre, for the red ochre.
That's where if you look, if you had to ask me which place to try to get it from, Ochres de France is my absolute favorite pigment supplier. They're a family-run business in France. They have incredible selection, incredible price, and they're really focused on a lime wash. So all their stuff is lime suitable, or they clearly state if it's lime suitable or not. And I think it's almost the entire selection is lime suitable. It's worth a trip to France, stockpile it and drive back, is what I'd say, because it's so good and it pays for itself. I mean, that load out there is hundreds of batches of paint, and it cost me $80. I got another load of pigment on its way, and I not even through, what I've got here, but it's such a good deal. And it's also insurance. If you really like a color blue, Megan Fitzpatrick had to post once that she was hunting for her favorite color blue on eBay because it went out of, it went out of production. Well, if you have the pigment, it can't go out of production. If I've got 30 batches of a color, I'm pretty safe for a long time that I'm not going to run out of it, So it's just that's kind of my recommendation is make the paint and stockpile pigments, because this doesn't take that much space, and they're pretty. They're pretty to look at. You know, your spouse will be happy to help you pick out some colors. It's fun. So, any questions about the pigments?
Yes, are these dry powdered pigments?
Yes. Yes. You
So
could
they
use
have unlimited shelf life?
exactly. And if you slake them, which would be to just mix them with water, and you change your mind, you can use them again. You just wet them again. So if they get wet and dry out, you can still just recycle them. It's not an issue at all. They're really robust and really lifetime stability, lifetime shelf life, like infinite shelf life. Some of the synthetics will fade in the sun, but I don't know where you would store your pigments in direct sunlight. I mean, I guess avoid that. But yeah. And if you compare that to commercial milk paint, yeah, commercial milk paint, it depends on the company. Some claim they have a long shelf life, but any commercial paint, no matter what it is, isn't going to last 10 years on the shelf. It isn't going to last 30 years on the shelf. You know, at some point, I don't want to have to go through and figure out, do I need to throw this out? I already have to do that with glue. I don't want to do that with paint. You know, this is just, I know if I can see the pigment, it's good to use. So that's, yeah. Good.
I've got a question
Sure.
as well, Nick.
Mhm.
How much are you normally adding of the pigment to a batch?
Sure. I'm just going to switch the view here a little bit so I can gesture with my hands. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay. So, can you see me or how does it look?
We can't really see your hands too much.
So here we go. Perfect. I'll hold them high.
Yeah.
So, got some pigment here. And when I want to add it to a batch, I have two options. I'm going to do the kind of the lazy way tonight. But all I do is I open my pigment. It's a fine powder. Use dust protection if you don't have one already on your face like me. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little spoon and I'm going to scoop out with my secret weapon, which is really important here. This is a sub-gram scale. This will tell me 0.01 or 0.05 gram plus minus. This is €8 on Amazon. I don't like Amazon, but yeah, maybe a kitchen supply place will have them. This is great. So I just have a little bowl. I just measure out the amount. You know, I aim for 30 grams. You can go up or down 10%, 15, 20%. It's not going to hurt. If you don't put enough pigment in, your color will be thin, but that's okay. You maybe want that. If you put too much pigment in, it won't hold in solution. It'll settle out, and that's okay. You just decant it, and then accept that you kind of have some waste pigment. But 30 grams is a sweet spot. There's specifics for different types of pigment that you could really adjust to. I don't bother because I like a natural green earth that's clay based. You should probably aim closer to something like 37 to 40 grams.
So sorry, those 30
ignore
grams per kilogram of color, or
No, sorry, of batch of paint. And the batch is a really easy recipe. I'll show it a little bit later, but it's one of these containers of quark, so 250 grams of quark, 30 grams of lime, 30 grams of pigment. So basically in the recipe, I wanted a 1-1-1, and that's 1 container of quark, 1 ounce of lime, 1 ounce of pigment. You can adjust it any direction. If you accidentally have 35 grams of lime or 25 grams, it doesn't matter. It's flexible. But what you'll get out of that is about a pint of paint with really good coverage. You probably won't need more than that for any reasonable project. But just so you know, when I talk about 30 grams of pigment, we're talking about 30 grams to do one batch of paint. And the easy method is to just weigh them out and then put them in the paint as we make it. The smart method is to add it to a small, like baby food jar of water and shake it. That's called slaking your pigments. And that's going to let you get a more controlled mixture into your paint. You can not have any clumping. You can very carefully add, drop by drop. I skip slaking most of the time at this point. It's one more jar to wash, and I don't care. I accept the color I get. I don't know. We'll see in a little bit. But for adding pigment, you can basically just put it in. We're more or less, we're cooking. We're not doing any crazy chemistry here. We're just making weird yogurt. So, any other questions on pigment or anything else so far?
Nick, how much water do you add to that batch?
So it's a really good question, and it's going to be a little hard to define because the quark can be different based on the country and even the brand. What I don't want is that my paint is too thin. So, in general, I start with as little water as possible and then add water as I mix everything up until it's good. So for the pigment, I slake it in about a tablespoon of water if I want to slake it. But this, for example, is a azo blue. It's it's made from aluminum silicate. It doesn't absorb water, meaning a little bit and it'll dissolve. If I add a earth-based pigment, so a dirt, they can kind of pretty quickly pick up a lot of water. And so if I try to mix it in a tablespoon, it just kind of turns to mud and I have to add more water. So your pigment is going to make a difference, how much water you should add. Your quark is going to make a difference, how much water you should add. I say start with the least amount of water possible, and I'll show that tonight. So for example, I've already prepped my lime. It's in here. My lime is already in water. I used about 5 tablespoons of water to dissolve my lime because I'm not going to add any for the pigment. And I just know with this quark, I want about 5 tablespoons total to get really thick paint. I like it thick. If I want to thin it, if the blender is struggling, I just add water. But if it's too watery, the paint will be foamy and your ingredients will settle out and it will really frustrate you. So start as low as possible.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Anybody else?
I have
Sure.
a question for you, Nick. I'm looking in a 1907, a 1939 reprint of a 1907 book, Fortunes and Formulas. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's Hiscox and Sloan. It has everything from bleaching skin to making paints and things like that. They don't list in the index milk paint. They list what we're calling milk paint under the topic of casein.
Yep, exactly.
And what's interesting is there's a lot of different formulas and uses for casein, different preparations and how to prepare it. And you can use it as an adhesive or pharmaceutical, and paints and varnishes and paper and textile sizing. But under paints and varnishes, and it's a little different than what you're saying because it contains ammonia.
Yep.
So it says preparations from mixtures of casein, lime, and ammonia are used for interior coatings. Exterior paints may be prepared by using lime, casein, and whiting. A little formaldehyde aids in rendering them more resistant to the weather. Colloidal masses. Yeah. Anyway,
that's what. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, it goes on, and I don't need to bore people with that. But I'm wondering if you knew of the ammonia part and decided that it wasn't necessary. Under adhesives, it suggests casein 10 parts, water 40 to 90 parts, lime 2 parts. So in all the cases, they are involving lime and water, but in this case, it mentions ammonia, and I'm wondering what the ammonia is doing or why you've chosen not to use it. Although it smells horrific, you know. But it's a great book, by the way.
It sounds very good. I dug through as many as I could find from archive.org is great. You know, it has so many of these books. Casein in general was the breakthrough material from the late 1800s to right up until plastics, fossil fuel based plastics arrived. They were making buttons and plastics out of casein. It was a miracle material. One of the methods for creating casein that I used is from an old German manual from 1908, where the Germans were complaining that the Germans were eating all their skim milk as quark, and the Americans were smart enough to actually just use it as a byproduct for industrial production and focus on eating just butter. And, you know, why can't the Germans eat less healthy, you know, and save some for the plastic industry? And so those old recipes, I've looked at a really wide variety of them. What I suspect, but I'm not a chemist. What I suspect the ammonia was for is to create a more spoil resistant paint, because this stuff is a milk product. It'll go bad. Like, yeah, I mean, this stuff will go bad in I left it out in July in the sun overnight, and it was fine the next day, but it'll spoil in the fridge in a week. You know, or 10 days. I think the last batch went bad. I test for everybody's benefit, except for my own. But basically, in the 20s and 30s, they try to commercialize this stuff.
And this is a minimal amount of ammonia. It's only 2 parts ammonia compared to 80 parts of water. So I think that you may well be right that it might be something to keep it from either spoiling or molding.
Yep. Makes sense as a preservative. I use the dolomitic lime. It is really effective against almost any kind of microbe. Not a lot of stuff loves the high pH. You know, it doesn't hurt your skin to touch it. I mean, this is an unsealed board. It's not going to hurt me to touch it. If I, suck on this, it's going to rehydrate. It's not going to instantly burn my mouth. It's just going to taste bitter, and it can be caustic. So, but yeah, that's why they have ammonia in there. I wanted to avoid anything that's not easily available. There are recipes that use linseed oil and pitch, like pine pitch.
Yeah.
I didn't want to use those because that's already inaccessible for people.
And this
stuff is easy.
This book does mention other additives, but not under paints and varnishes, under either sizing and as well plastics, synthetic wool. And those are all uses for the casein. So
it was popular stuff. But because it has a challenge in shelf life, and petroleum products are just cheaper in the end to work with, it died out very quickly when plastics came along. But hopefully we can bring it back. We'll put BP out of business if we make enough paint here. But I'll move on a little bit, just for timing's sake. But if anyone wants to know why this fresh milk paint, the stuff looks great. It really is an incredible paint. Just the color, the depth of the color, especially when you have your own pigments, is unbelievable. It gives a dead flat finish, but that actually means it's got more depth of color than something glossy. When you look at it, you really see the color. You'll have to see it to believe it, but I love it. It's got 0 VOCs, like I covered, and there's no plastic. And that's important for me. I got a family. I've got small kids. I don't want to be bringing too much garbage into the house. And plastic free makes it easier to burn your scraps, right? Good news that plastic wood backsplash is gone and has been replaced with natural slate, so we can rest easy. But this stuff is also durable. It's basically glue, a protein glue made from one of the most evolved substances on the planet. I mean, milk is an incredible substance. This casein protein is extremely, extremely complex, and the bond it creates to wood is very strong. It's just like hide glue is a protein-based bond. It's strong. So you're making, or as you mentioned, the casein glue. You're making glue that's colorful, and because of the quite heavy amount of lime I use, that this is the way I designed this recipe to be kind of a hybrid lime wash and milk paint. I'm using about 3 times more lime than you need. If you do that, you get it, like I mentioned before, it actually turns to stone over time. Paul asked last night, or 2 nights ago, he said, well, yeah, I love milk paint because you can layer it and it wears through so good. I said, yeah, it wears eventually. You might have to work hard at it to get it to wear. I've got stuff that's been in pretty hard use for some years now, and often the wood fails before the paint fails, just like glue. So be prepared for that. Maybe you'll get it to wear through. It wears. It's not invincible, but it's as durable as any commercial paint for sure. Any commercial acrylic, it holds up just as well. It's also stupidly easy to use. That's the biggest difference between fresh milk paint and commercial milk paint. I'm not good at painting, but I have never failed with this milk paint. It just sticks to where you put it. It doesn't leave brush strokes unless you want to. You can mix it really thick if you want brush strokes, but it self-levels. It binds to itself. It blends. It looks good even if you do a bad job. It looks like you did it on purpose. It's good. And I think on that stool here, I mean, again, a toddler did it and it's been abused for years, but if you can see, the paint turned out great. And you can see kind of on the edges, with enough abuse and tipping of this poor little stool, you will, break the corners, but mostly it's because the wood's getting worn off slowly. But so you've got just a paint with no drawbacks. So that's why I say fresh milk paint. Chris Schwartz said something really, really generous in an interview with the Woodwright, Wood Bywright. He said he feels it's a game changer for the entire craft. I like it. I hope you guys try it, and I hope it becomes for everybody their go-to paint. I hope that this just becomes, like a good hide glue. You say, yeah, this is my natural choice for using, with a woodworking project. That's my goal here. And that's why I'm really addicted to making fresh milk paint.
I think Scott has a question.
Perfect. Let's go ahead with it.
Hey Nick, question on applying more than one coat.
Sure.
Obviously then the color will deepen, and then you've got these layers of what will turn to stone. Does each progressive layer need to be keyed like you would do with other paints, so that you have to actually scratch the surface for it to bond to each other?
No,
it doesn't need any keying or sanding or anything like that in between.
They recommend that with commercial milk paint, and maybe with other paints. I don't even I don't sand between coats, even just to knock down any nibs or anything. I mean, I'm bad at painting, and all my results turn out very, very good. Because I mean, don't tell Chris. He told us to sand his chair between coats, and we just skipped it, and it looks great. So like, he couldn't tell. Yeah, it's a water-based paint. It'll raise the grain a little. So if you want to sand after your first coat, you can do it. You don't have to do it for adhesion. This stuff sticks to itself great. You can come back weeks later and it's going to stick to itself, so you don't have to be stressed. If you want to touch it up, you can just paint over.
And does it really matter then? Sorry. Does it really matter then on the coats? I'm not saying that you want more depth in the absorption through the top layer in the paint. Would you water it down initially for your first coats if you were going to go in with some, and then make it thicker, or does the milk paint actually not seep into, but does it actually absorb into the timber? It'll absorb less the thicker it is. Maybe sit on top.
It's possible that you would get a little bit better, penetration if you made your first coat really thin. I haven't noticed a difference because it is a water-based paint. My one recommendation is, if you're planing a surface, to just a silky smooth shine, and especially if you're kind of chasing down a low spot and you're burnishing that spot with the sole of the plane, it might be a little hard to get paint to stick. Nothing will stick to that, if I planed something and I'm worried, I might scuff sand in general, surface prep before any coats. I might just do a very quick scuff sand with 120 or 240, but just to give a little bit of a grab and to get away from a truly burnished surface that nothing will stick to. But if in terms of penetration, I think the paint's wet enough because it's not oil-based, it's water-based. I think it gets down in there pretty well no matter what. It's a good topic for experimentation. You can certainly divide up your paint. Just take a little scoop and make a very watery first primer. You can absolutely do that. It's your paint, you have complete flexibility on it.
And how many layers do you think you've experimented with over the years? And I mean, obviously you can reapply it in the future as well. So after
I've got a lot of experience with the paint, but different layers coming back over time, I've done. The paint's too durable. I haven't had to touch up that much stuff. So I've experimented. I got a layered piece somewhere over here. Maybe you can see I tried my hardest to scuff the hell out of this one. It's black over red. It's probably hard to get the camera to focus on it.
No,
you can get it on the corners to wear down. But layering and coming back, I paint over my test pieces to layer. But of course, test piece doesn't get quite the same abuse generally as furniture. I eventually have one or two pieces I'll need to repaint. It'll take the paint, no problem. The layers, because they've had a lot of time to cure, do get also a good separation in the color. Fresh milk paint doesn't have much of a problem of redissolving the layers underneath. As long as you've given it maybe a week, if you're really, really worried. But think I did this the same day, to be honest.
And last question just now then, different species of woods, that'll affect obviously, so obviously I'm not saying you're going to make something out of exotics and then paint it. I'm not saying that's rare. You've actually got some there, but using generally if you're going to paint something, I'm not saying you would maybe use something like pine or poplar's another good one for doing that. Poplar's quite soft actually, so I mean I'm not saying you're looking at durability on strength of the actual timber in the first place, but harder, and I'm not saying oily woods. That's another thing. If you've got woods with any oils in them, maybe the water won't actually seep in that much in the first place. It maybe just like over the top of it.
If there's a wood that's generally known to be a challenge, I would potentially expect a challenge. But spruce, I like spruce. It works great, and I'm in Austria. I'm in the Alps. It's everywhere here. This stuff's cut, locally cut spruce. So spruce, white oak here, and this is doozy, Aphrosalia, which is a rock hard tropical wood. This stuff is oily. I did no surface prep. It's all identically bonded. It's all.
I don't mean to command the conversation, but you mentioned the other night there about the ammonia, not the ammonia, but it actually darkens some oaks and stuff like that will react with some of the tannins.
Sure.
So you'll get like a kind of darkening effect on wood. Yeah.
Exactly. So on white oak, anything with tannins, you're actually getting an ammonia fuming effect. It's in casein paint, they used to use another additive in casein glue to prevent that because it was a non-desired effect in the glue. But yeah, you can just, without adding any pigment, you can instantly fume oak or anything with tannin. That's why you should always test your test species. Your test board should always be your intended species.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Don't want to take up too much.
Perfect. No worries. Richard, please.
My question is twofold as well. Can you use it on walls? You can paint a room with it, could you?
Yes and no. Here's my caveat. Austrian paint is all plastic. The wall paint here is plastic, but they have talc. Well, what have you got? Alpina Weiss or
no lime wash.
Yeah, but what do they sell at every Baumarkt? Is Alpina Weiss is Austria's #1 paint, right? And that's just acrylic. They call it mineral paint because they add a little bit of talc, but it's acrylic. But lime wash are great. Milk paint would stick to lime wash, no problem. If there's an acrylic paint, like a latex paint, it's plastic. I can't guarantee adhesion. The Austrian stuff has some talc added to call it mineral paint and to give it a kind of a white base, which is enough mineral that every splash I've made over the years sticks to my walls perfectly. I cannot get them off. It's not like it's dirt. It's my walls are painted. So I give the caveat. It's a fantastic idea, and commercial milk paints are marketed as that. I would always test an inconspicuous spot, wait 24 hours, and see how easily you can scratch it off. If it doesn't scratch off, it shouldn't fail long term. It should fail quickly in terms of adhesion. If it works after 24 hours, it's only going to get better. But it's your choice. On fresh drywall or fresh plaster, it'll stick perfectly. It likes a porous surface. So it's just your base layer. That's a challenge. Megan Fitzpatrick had the idea. I just haven't tested it. Is using shellac as a primer, because shellac is going to give you a good adhesive base. So it could work. It was a very popular indoor paint for a very long time. It's a great choice. You can paint it in your bedroom and sleep in the bedroom that night. It has no smell at all. So, yeah. And your second question, yeah.
Second part to that is that if you then want to have a consistency of color for, would it be possible to mix your lime or your calcium carbonate and your
calcium hydroxide,
sorry, and your pigment and thoroughly mix that before you make up your batch, and then you know that your 30 grams or 60 grams of mixed pigment and lime will give you a consistent color if you're adding your 250 grams of quark. And
you could absolutely say this is my fixed ratio. I always, you could make a giant batch if you wanted and just say, 2 scoops of this every time. I've had really good luck by simply sticking with, there's 2 approaches. One is if you use the same pigment, like a mono pigment approach, I always want this red. I will always get this red, plus or minus 10% grams, doesn't matter. This is the color it is. I haven't added any black, I haven't added any white, I haven't added any blue. It's going to end up this color. The other option in a mix is to take very precise measurements and write down notes. The most important is to be embracing variety. Your pigments will eventually settle out of solution. So it could be that you kind of stop paying attention. Your pigment's settled, you should have stirred, and your color will drift because, for example, this blue will settle out of solution faster than a natural ochre. So if I mix blue and yellow to get green, it'll have less blue in it, as if I forget to mix it and I take a lunch break. I actually think that character is better. But I understand what you mean. I'm supposed to recreate this blue and I can't remember the recipe exactly. So I should have taken better notes. But if you take good notes, it's quite easy to get the same color family, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else? Matthias, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, this is sort of, well, not a deviation, but going back 10 minutes or so in the conversation when you were talking about casein. Obviously, because you're using quark, you're going to be using the kind of milk out of which quark is usually made, that is to say, cow's milk. How about other caseins? How about goat milk, lamb's milk, sheep milk? How about human milk?
Human milk is 60% whey, 40% casein. Human milk is unfortunately not suitable. Also, I don't want to be on a list for trying to Google the recipe, but if you,
that last question was very much tongue in cheek.
But the goat and sheep are roughly the same casein ratios. I believe goat's milk is even higher.
Right.
So you can get it. My simple answer is, goat cheese is more interesting than paint, and cow milk is highly subsidized and quite cheap. I would use the goat milk for something interesting, but you should be able to use it. I have no reason to expect it does not work.
No.
The bigger question is, people have asked me about plant-based, and I can only say, I have no idea. That's a different world. Test it, write a book, share the information. I love the idea of having those options, but for goat's milk or sheep's milk, I would expect it to work. I haven't tried it. We have it available here, but I just haven't bothered, because I believe cow's milk should be quite universally available. Is my answer.
Yeah, no, I was also partially wondering because I've quite often made my own quark yeah, well, it is quark. It's
Yep.
essentially fresh cheese for making Swedish cheesecake.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly that. You know, this is the first step in making most cheeses. Actually, it's a good transition. It's a good thing I planted you here. To kind of look at the next step, which is what happens if you can't get quark for some reason, you know, or if you just want to make your own.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it correctly. And then there's
ways with the WHE.
Do I have it there? Yeah, WHEY is the way.
There are ways to do it.
There we go. No. Can everyone see my shared screen again?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. So if for some reason you don't have access to quark, you can make what I call paint grade quark. This is a recipe I developed and it works perfectly fine. What you do is instead of overnight or 2 nights or all these complex things that cheesemakers have to do to get good paint or good cheese, you take 2 liters or 2 quarts of skim milk, you heat it up to like body temperature, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, add 2/3 cup of normal 5% household vinegar, kind of just pour it around the pot, like in the pot, dispersed, but don't stir. If you stir, you'll mess up the curds. You just wait 10 minutes and then strain it through a colander. You do not need a cheesecloth. I don't like the idea of having to wash a cheesecloth. You just strain it. I strain into a bowl, and then you can strain it again. And then you just kind of let it sit a little bit in a Tupperware to self-drain, and that'll get kind of that vinegar, water, and whey will separate. And then here's your quark. You can rinse it a little bit as it separates, and then you're ready to go. You've got the same thing as this commercial stuff, you know. So, Richard and Sean, you both have questions. Let's start with Richard.
From a joinery point of view, can you use this as an exterior paint?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My answer is I wouldn't. I wrote out a long explanation to somebody today, which was basically, boy, I'd love to hear how it goes for you. Let me find my sample board. So,
this book suggests adding formaldehyde to use it as an exterior.
There's a French recipe that says pitch and linseed oil will make it suitable for exterior. Sinopia is a milk paint company. They sell a wet milk paint. I don't know if they make it from fresh. It's a question you'll have to ask them. But they sell a liquid milk paint with pitch and oil in it, which is approved for outdoors. But I took milk paint and left it in the drip line of the shed. So it's just getting tons of rain here in the Alps for a year. And the paint is toast. I mean, parts of it had an Osmo oil top coat, and it's still just, it's basically it's still there, but it's beat up. So soaking wet is bad for the paint. But I have a chest that's on a covered porch. It gets blown snow. It's fine. It depends on your top coat a little bit. But the third example I have, just to show, I had it as a hidden slide, but I'll unhide it. Let me just go back to this screen sharing. So I have a toothbrushing stool for my toddlers, which is as outdoor of weather as you can get in this world, because it's just constantly soaking wet. It's just every time I look, the light's on in the bathroom and there's standing water on this. The Osmo oil top coat has failed. It's flaked off. You see that. The paint underneath is fine. The paint, it looks like it's in bad shape, but that's just the top coat. The oil has flaked away, and I haven't bothered scratching away all the oil and putting a new top coat on. If you used it for outdoors, I would only use it under the understanding it could fail. It's a great experiment. If I was painting something like a bench where it's covered by a roof and it would get occasional rain blown against it, I would think it would be fine. That's how mine is, and it's fine. If it's the wall of a building and it gets a lot of rain, you could see eventually that it starts to dissolve, because it is, it's limestone and, a natural protein binder. Hide glue isn't fully waterproof. Eventually, even wood doesn't love to be soaking wet constantly. So that's the caveat I recommend for indoor, so that everybody has a stable experience. I just am looking forward to doing more outdoor experimentation. I have experiments in progress, but I don't want to,
thank you,
make people have too much faith in it. Yep.
Nick,
thank
just
you.
so you know, after Sean, you have 2 questions in the chat.
Perfect. Okay, so Sean, then go ahead, Sean, and then I'll
Hey, I have 2 young ladies here who are very excited at the thought of making their own paint.
Perfect.
Wondering, have you tried using this on top of to repaint furniture that has existing paint or varnish or some sort of finish on it? And if so, how did it go?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't like to bond to existing finishes. Acrylic paint has one advantage, and that's that plastic. It's like lighting a little green army man on fire. That plastic will melt and stick to everything. Acrylic paint is magical for its ability to stick to almost anything. If you put it over an existing finish, what you'll likely get is that it chips. That's the only situation where I would ever expect it to chip or flake, is if it has no initial bond. If you have that, what I would suggest is a coat of shellac. I think that would give you a foundation to skip stripping the paint. I hate stripping paint. I hate stripping finish. So I think you could use shellac as a sandwich layer to provide adhesion, and then you can go from there.
Fantastic.
You always make a test board. If you have adhesion failure, it's going to be pretty quickly. You're going to know it. You can let it sit for a day to try to give it as much of a benefit of curing as you want, but start scratching it, see if it fails,
Great stuff. Ada, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any risk of the wood, because of the milk quark, rotting. Is there any risk of that?
Sorry, one more time, of it doing what?
Paint or the wood rotting because of the
rotting. I don't have that experience. I believe really strongly that it's due to the high pH of the lime. There are a lot of milk paint recipes that use borax, and borax is not nearly as high of a pH. And so they say, oh, there's anti-mildew additives for milk paint. I mean, if something can grow in this stuff, I'd be shocked. It's sharp. I have made a kid-friendly recipe, for my toddlers, that is lower amount of lime. You have to fine tune it with pH strips, because it's down to like half-gram increments. But you can get a pH that's the same as just water, because casein will convert to calcium caseinate, which is the glue that you want. It rests at a pH of 6.7, which is just below water. It's perfectly safe. I aim for a pH just above that, so that I know, hey, everything's converted, and now I have a true casein-based glue with pigment in it. So I aim for like 7.5. because a pH of 7, you can eat the stuff, right? It doesn't matter. It's completely neutral. So there's no real pH protecting it from spoilage. And I did this months ago. It's not spoiled. Smells normal. I do a top coat of oil wax to give extra protection. I guess if something had a neutral pH and was constantly wet, it'd be an issue. But nope, I think you're actually in a good place with it. I don't expect any spoilage.
Nick, if you were talking about Sean's question about going over another finish,
yep.
And you had mentioned earlier in a conversation with Lost Art that she had suggested maybe putting a shellac coating.
Yep.
And most likely, if you have a piece of furniture or something with an acrylic finish on it already, you could seal it with shellac, assuming that the milk paint will then adhere to the shellac.
That's my idea. Yep. That's the idea. Is I call it a sandwich layer. It's what Megan suggested. Peter Galbert has a lot of really good videos on milk paint, commercial milk paint, where he does a really, really light cut of shellac between every layer of commercial milk paint because it says it helps it bind. I just don't need it for this paint.
Yeah, but that might solve Sean's problem.
Exactly. I would take a thin cut of shellac. I'm just not a shellac expert. I'm not really an expert in many things, but I'm obsessed with milk and milk paint. So that's where I've made too much paint over the years. I can tell you a really good example. I have a stool that's an IKEA stool. I sanded it because it somehow found its way into our house. I sanded off the cheap film finish that was on there and then milk painted it. And no problem, it stuck. The only places that chipped were where the stool was dented. So when I sanded it, those little divots didn't get sanded and the paint did not adhere. I didn't put any shellac on. I didn't sand that aggressively, but it will fail on top of a film finish.
Thanks very much, Nick.
And in the chat, I think there was a couple commercial versus homemade. I don't see a difference. I don't see a benefit to homemade. I would say that the commercial stuff's great. It's highly controlled, perfectly made. It's better than the homemade. So if you can get commercial, get it. It's just in the US, it's hard to find. My biggest issue with the homemade stuff is milk is frequently around the world at this point being more aggressively processed. They're doing ultra high pasteurization or extended shelf life pasteurization, which is higher than a standard cook of pasteurization, which means whey protein denatures at that temperature. Whey then sticks to the casein more, which makes it harder to get the casein out. So if you had access to just unpasteurized milk, it'll separate really well. I think pasteurization is an important technology and it keeps us from getting tuberculosis and things, but I grew up 6th generation Kroll dairy farm. We were just drinking regular milk from the cow. That stuff separates great because the whey has not been attacked with heat to make it bind to the casein. So when they're making commercial quark, they're working with more suitable milk than what you're going to get off the shelf. So I would use commercial quark if you can find it, even if it costs, I don't know, 10%, 20% more. It's much more convenient. But for the US, it's harder to find. So I show how to make quark.
Okay, we've got another question, which was somebody who wants to use the powdered milk paint that they have. Can you actually add it to the quark?
It's absolutely a great question. Mix the batch that I'll show how to make. Mix the batch like you're trying to make it without any pigment. So just quark and lime. And then you can choose to add pigment if you want. Otherwise, you can just use the commercial powder as pigment. But basically, that commercial milk paint is in an ideal ratio to just add as much as you want. It does not matter. You make your paint and you just add the commercial stuff. It lets you get the adhesion of fresh quark, and you can use up your commercial stuff. I have to be honest, I have bags of commercial stuff going bad on the shelf over there because I could add it in. It is a way to reduce your guilt to add your commercial stuff, but I mean, I really just like the fresh stuff, and it's not like I'm really adding any price to just make it completely myself. It's sunk cost. I already paid for the commercial stuff 10 years ago, but you can do it. You can add it to the fresh quark and lime mix, and it works great. It just absorbs. So you can use it, for example, if you have a pigment that you want to just use your dark green commercial paint as a pigment, you can do that. You just add it, whatever you want. Thin it with water, but there's no limit.
Okay, and we've also got a question from Simon. I think then we probably need to get on with the demo, I would suggest.
Perfect. Sounds good. So Simon, please.
You need to unmute Simon.
Hang on
Simon, you muted.
There we go. Okay. You just very, very briefly mentioned in the chat that you, just to get the most information out of you, that if you wanted a different type of finish to the flat finish that it naturally gives, that you could burnish it to create a different finish. Could you talk us through that process, please?
Sure. The burnishing is going to depend a little bit, surprisingly, on your pigment. But basically, you would burnish it like you would burnish any commercial milk paint. Also, real milk paint is tougher to burnish. Old-fashioned milk paint, you can burnish a little bit better. But if you've used them, you just burnish them in a traditional manner with, for example, I would use actually surprisingly rough adhesive or 3M abrasive pad. Maybe I got a piece here we can try to burnish up a little bit. I got a lot of them. I got to figure out one that's not oiled. So yeah, there we go. So on a first level here, I'm going to let it cure for a while, and I'm going to try to burnish it a little bit. I'm using a rougher abrasive at first to knock down anything that's not smooth. Then switch to a finer abrasive, as fine as you've got. You could use, honestly, even cloth if you wanted to. The thing is, because of the high lime content, and just for comparison, these, it won't show up on camera, but these are identical pigments, identical quark. It's just different amount of lime. And this one's just, it's thin and it doesn't have any body. This one is, it just has a beautiful body. You don't need to do much burnishing. It starts with kind of a dead flat look, but with a really velvety, gentle sheen. It's hard to exactly describe. So it's already, almost when it's done, on its way to having a light burnish. And then in use, as your hands are going over it, you're going to burnish it. But otherwise, just basically buff it into a shine. You do not need to use like a polissoir. You do not need to aggressively work it to get a perfect burnishing on it. You can use the back of a brown paper bag. Will give you a nice buff on it. You basically just rub it until you get where you want. I say that the pigment depends because different pigments will affect how the end look is. If you use titanium dioxide white, it'll look a little chalky. Titanium dioxide just doesn't settle into solution so well, so it dusts out a little bit. But so you'd have to polish it a little more if you want to burnish, but just follow any standard burnishing technique. You'll get a feel for it really quick.
Okay, and in terms of the actual finish, I presume, you're not getting near like a gloss, are you? It would be more like how you would refer to it, like a satin in a paint.
Soft, definitely. A very low sheen.
Right.
It is, I mean, maybe I can get kind of an angle on it. It basically, this one is actually soft waxed. And it's still, even with the soft wax, so a beeswax finish, beeswax linseed oil finish, you have almost no sheen. If I take an unfinished one, maybe a dark one here, there's no sheen on it. It's basically the slightest bit of sheen. As it gets burnished with use, you'll get right up to it, just before a satin, something like that. It's beautiful. It's very natural. It looks like raw wood, the way raw wood will get a sheen, but it's not glossy. You can cover it with a glossy finish. You can use any top coat. Yes, but anyways, that's that. Should I jump onto the demonstration then? I think that's, if we can,
Thanks
for
for your time.
everybody. Yeah, no problem. I'll demonstrate here before I lose too many people how we make the paint from scratch. And then I'll stick on for as long as anyone wants, because I don't have to work until tomorrow morning. So what I've got here, and maybe I can tip my screen down just a little.
I was going to suggest just as
yeah, let's see. So let me move a few things back so I don't lose this whole pile. Give me just a second here. So no cause for alarm. All right. So what we've got, maybe I'll just hold it up, that'll work. What I've got, number one tip is get a motorized mixing tool. This little NutriBullet is awesome. The only thing is eventually I expect to burn out the motor or run the battery out, but it's a rechargeable battery powered juice blender. I think it was $30. It's awesome. If you want to save some money, get a secondhand immersion blender. These things are awesome, unlimited torque. This will zap your paint into a perfect texture in seconds. You will not get an issue with foam if you have the consistency right. So mechanical blending is not going to cause an issue with foam like you get with commercial milk paints. So what I've got, I'm going to put on my safety glasses because I'm being good. I've mixed the lime in here already with water so that I've got just a very manageable powder. I don't like doing the powder indoors. I do it outside. So I kind of capture it in the water. And then I just open this up. And I'm just going to wear the glasses because I don't want to splash lime in my eyes. So I take my quark. And I just drop it into that paint or into the lime. So you can kind of do this in any functional order, right? You just want to get the lime together with the quark. I like the lime to be captured in the water because it's more manageable. That's more, it avoids that I have just a really fine powder vapor in the air of caustic lime. But if your quark is really wet, then you're gonna maybe just want to put the lime straight into the wet quark.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't want is to have a dry quark and powdered lime. It's going to be impossible to mix, and then I'm pouring water on top, and that's going to kick up a bunch of dust, and that's, something I'd want to avoid.
Yeah, we're not seeing that addition, by the way, Nick.
Sorry, just here. So it's probably better you don't see that. This guy, hands covered in the stuff. It's sticky, which is what we want.
Are you eyeballing and not measuring? Normally you would measure, or you just...
So what I did is I took 30 grams of lime and measured it and put it in ahead of time. And then it's a full 250 gram container. The quark I can, it's just a container of quark, 250 grams. So I've measured everything with my scale ahead of time. But to be honest, if you're off, it won't make a huge difference. I mean, if you cut down the lime in half, the texture of the paint will be different, but it'll still work. If you add twice as much lime, you're basically making whitewash. But you know, if you're you could eyeball it. I still measure because I have a scale, but I am measuring. So I've got everything in my NutriBullet. I push the magic button, and then we go loud. Maybe you don't even hear it, but it's gone.
Yeah, Zoom filters it out these days.
All right, so what that did is now it has made a very, it's going to be hard to see, but it's made this, and I do not want to pour it on my keyboard, but I'll pick it up with a spoon.
No, we saw it. Yeah.
It's made this very thick, beautiful, it's basically yogurt, right? So
Yeah.
it's in fact, it's actually, you know, it's basically Greek yogurt that's been thinned out and lime added. So you've got now a texture that's just beautiful. Now all I need to do is get some paint in, or some pigment. Just for reference, right when you mix it, it will be a little barn scented. It does smell like manure. It's the chemical breakdown of the quark. It lasts for a few seconds. It doesn't smell like this when you're painting. But if you put your nose in it to see if a batch has gone bad, it'll smell. Don't use your nose. It's paint. Don't huff paint. So now that I've got that mixed, I've got this, you know, blended base. Now all I want to do is add my pigments. So I've got a French ochre, and I'm going to take my scale here. I'm just going to zero out my scale. And if I was being really exotic, I would just pour it straight into the batch, but I'm going to be a little bit cautious and put it in a second container first, so that if I go over, I don't have to scoop it out on camera. So you won't be able to see this, but I'm just scooping pigments in. Every pigment has a different density, up to really, like, we're talking a 50% difference in densities. So I can't give measurements for pigment in terms of scoops. But for example, that's 15 grams of French ochre. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to add it. Again, I could slake it in water first, but I just don't care. It's going to blend just fine. If I had a gritty pigment that was giving me problems, like multiple times in use, titanium dioxide can do that. I would slake it in water and then filter it through a fine tea strainer. But now I'm going to do some blue, so I feel like it, and we're going to see what we get. And it is exciting for everyone here. I have not combined these two colors before, these two pigments.
Fantastic.
So let's see how good or bad it is. See, you got to have faith in me here. So we've got Havana ochre, it's kind of an orange, and then this great Anzo blue. I really like both of these. So this blue, you can maybe tell there's a lot less volume. This stuff is dense.
Yeah.
So we're gonna just add that right on top. And then we'll look in there. So you can just see it's just in there. I'm gonna close this up again.
Do you have to compensate for density rather than quantity when you switch out?
I go by weight. There's definitely an argument to be made, but ignorance is sometimes the best tool. So, you know, I just put it in, and does anyone want to guess what color we're gonna get?
That's green or teal.
Let's see.
Sounds good.
I suspect that as well. Let's see, maybe we get just a dead battery color.
Ooh.
Quietest blender I've ever seen. Oh no, it's muddyish. Muddy.
Muddy.
It's nice though.
So will always make brown.
So then we let it mix. And a good tip is basically you can rely on the basics of color theory, right? You know, reds and yellow is going to make orange, yellow and blue is going to make green, right? But every pigment is chemically unique and they all have their own attitudes. So always, always, always make a test board, because the color of the dry pigment is not the color of the wet pigment. The color of the wet pigment is not the color of the paint, and the color of the wet paint is not the color of the paint on the wood. The color of the paint on the wood after one coat is not the color of the paint on the wood after 4 coats.
Does it tend to darken or lighten as it dries?
Well, it differs. That's all. It's a great question. It differs. I'm just going to blend one more time to be safe. I don't care about the stuff stuck to the wall. I'm pretty laissez-faire on this stuff. I think we're going to get a pretty nice olive green out of this. So I'm going to now pop this beautiful smoothie maker top, and let's get a nice pour here. Oh, that consistency is just perfect. Maybe everyone can see just that is the texture I want. Does anyone see that there are no air bubbles? I just blended it 3 times in a row. This thing just has zero foam. I mean, yeah, I don't know if you can see the top without me pouring it on my keyboard, but it just, there's, you know, no foam.
You're going to keep it in a fridge until you use it? Keep it refrigerated?
Yep. Exactly. If you using it the same day is my recommendation. Not that it spoils, but it separates. Any milk paint will do that. Your texture's nicest the first day. By the way, if you get foam, you can use one of these if you have one. Don't buy one just because you think you need one. If your paint is this thick and you put it in a cold fridge, what can happen is you get gelatin the next morning. Don't panic, just blend it down and add some water. You're going to have to aggressively mechanically blend it, like with the blender or a stick mixer, but it works fine. You can avoid this by adding water to thin the paint as thin as you feel comfortable with before you put it in the fridge for the night. So that's my approach. I have never had to give up on a batch of paint because it went thick or something, but you can always just make a second batch. Stuff's cheap. My advice when you start out, I call them keys. Just make a bunch of these little test sticks from scrap wood and paint all your colors and save these like your paint swatches. I hate paint swatches because they're too micro managing little increments, but having an idea and then writing down your recipe is really good. So, but big test boards are nicer. So let's paint. I want to keep the brush quite dry, you know, I just don't want to soak the board. But let's see here. So I think we've got quite a nice olive. And I think it's going to darken up with a few coats, but I actually might, I hope we're recording, I might actually want to recreate this color in the future.
Yes, it looks like a sort of olive stroke khaki.
Yeah, exactly. So all I'm doing here is just more or less drawing it out. Draw it out a little, it's fine. It doesn't matter that much. Good, it's drawn out, it's fine. It's going to dry fast. It's a little cool here. The relative humidity's gone up a little. It's night. It might take a little longer to dry. During the day, and especially on a test board where I can be a little reckless, I can get on a test board a couple coats in like 20 minutes. Like just as I clean up, I put another coat on because I know I can be a little sloppy. I just care to know what it looks like with enough pigment. Generally, you're going to want to pace yourself out that the wood is dry. If it's warm and low humidity, that might be half an hour between coats. If it's really damp, it's going to be longer.
Yeah.
Matthias, please go ahead.
Unmute myself. Yes, that was one more question I was meaning to ask, and you set me up beautifully for it. Do you have any particular preference when it comes to brushes for this paint?
Excellent question. I like these are Schuler brushes. They're a couple bucks and they're made in Germany. I really like them. But the simple answer is you want a synthetic brush that's made for water-based paint because it won't swell up. So cheap synthetic is great. You just rinse with water, so you can wash your brushes in the sink. General cleanup is just in the sink, the kitchen sink. If you have a lot of pigment at the bottom of your jar and you run it through the dishwasher, you will be in trouble at home because pigment will cover every surface of your dishwasher and every silicone baking thing that was in there. So try to rinse out the pigments really well, but otherwise just use your wash.
That would sound like you're talking from personal experience there, Nick.
I found it online, I'm sure. But you can rinse this out in the yard. I just throw it in the yard and blast it with the hose to thin out the pH a little, but it doesn't hurt the grass. It's actually a nutrient. Lime is an additive to grass to help it stabilize the pH. So cleanup's easy. Yeah.
So you would explicitly not use natural bristle brushes?
I would avoid them. I mean, I've had people say they've used foam brushes. I've used rollers. I don't think there's any hard limit. I just wouldn't use a natural brush because they're not really ideal for water-based. But I'm no expert in brushes. I mean, I use the cheap synthetics because they work well. I would be more concerned about losing bristles than any hard recommendation of an expensive brush or anything. This is close to dry to the touch and ready for a second coat. So you guys saw maybe it was a few minutes. So I'm already going to do a second coat. Any questions, anybody?
Yes. So related to the brush question, you did say, I think, early on that it does have some self-leveling properties.
But maybe I can show. The lighting's no good in here. Sorry, guys. Maybe you can see that. I don't think you can see brush strokes in here. You see the wood grain, but not the brush strokes. Your first coat will always look bad with milk paint. Also with this milk paint. You might want this effect, but this just happens to be a straight grained sample piece. If there's any tear out, it'll suck up the pigment weird and look really terrible. But second coat looks better. Third coat looks good. I tend to go for 4 coats because I like solid coverage. I don't actually need the grain showing through. I use a lot of spruce. It's nothing special. I like solid coverage or something like 95, 98% opacity.
Yeah.
If you wanted to have more transparency, you could do less coats. And maybe you can see it here. I didn't sand. I didn't scuff off any dust like you often have to do with commercial milk paint. I just come at it with a pretty dry brush. I mean, it's nothing too stressful. I just don't want to have big globs of paint. If you do big globs of paint with any kind of paint, you'll have a problem. But just come in with quite a brush where you're trying to pull the paint around. So now I'm already getting better coverage. It's gonna build quick.
Does it tend to chalk?
No, that's one of the big advantages. I'll find a piece around here somewhere. Test piece. Just a second. I was told I'm allowed to talk to myself.
You have a better quality conversation that way.
Yeah, exactly. This way I don't feel out of my depth.
along with the question about chalking, is it necessary to seal it, or is that good enough?
They're both great questions. I, by default, seal it mostly because I do not want the natural finish of dirty children fingers priming up the paint unevenly. So I use the soft wax recipe from Chris Schwartz. It's in the book as well. If you haven't found it, he shares it online very generously. I use soft wax, or a soap finish is also a great choice. They both work really well. I don't find very much color shift at all, which is often a problem because this paint is less chalky. So you're not losing whatever color the chalkiness was kind of giving it. Just for reference, these are unfinished and these are finished. They're basically the same palette. You know, they're the same colors in finished and unfinished. You know, they line up pretty perfectly. In real life, I'm pretty hard pressed to tell if something's finished or not. The cured paint has a feeling like it's been nicely finished with a really soft natural wax, and a soft wax finish feels pretty natural, like there's nothing there. So, you know, some of them I can tell that they're not finished, but generally a soft wax finish I would go to every time. It makes it easier to wash as well. If you can wash the paint, I don't get water spotting. Maybe water spotting would happen. I haven't encountered it. The paint it turns into limestone. So technically you can dissolve it with water, but it's not going to happen instantly. So yeah, I know with commercial milk paints, there's a lot of frustration with water spotting, especially right when you start with it. Yeah, before this stuff cures, I would expect water spotting if you splash on it, but I don't know. I just never have had it, and I'm not very cautious, so
I've only used it on an inside surface on the backdrop of an interior cherry corner cabinet, so not a wear surface at all, and upright, so water never landed on it. So I didn't have any idea, but I do recall that it was very dry to the touch, like a chalking paint, but not necessarily would rub off on your fingers.
Sorry if I just may chime in for a second,
sure.
Because I use lime paint, lime wash a lot, and in lime wash especially, it's kind of a very thin version of the lime paint.
Yeah, exactly.
But you even for traditional lime wash on walls, you use per 10 liters one cup of quark to just to prevent chalking. So the quark or the casein prevents chalking out of lime colors.
So it's almost creating a seal.
Yeah,
it's glue exactly
within itself.
Yeah, two reasons you use quark in lime wash, in traditional wall lime wash. One is to prevent chalking out. The other is to bind pigments if you use any.
Similar to an egg wash as well. An egg wash.
It's a tempera. Yep, exactly. It's another protein-based tempera. I have good news. I found the test board I was looking for. It's on the back of this one. So that explains it. This, this is not sealed, and it is, this camera doesn't pick it up. This is just a gorgeous ochre. There's no chalkiness to it. It's just a smooth, beautiful, nothing's rubbing off. It doesn't feel that dry. It does feel unfinished. I believe with most of these, daily use a little bit, and you're gonna burnish that off. A light burnishing.
Nice.
If it was a piece of furniture, I would always finish it. If it was on the wall, piece of art or something, I wouldn't finish it because it's just there's not a wear surface. So that's
what is the true cure time on it, Nick, as opposed to just dry?
It's a great question. Depends what you consider truly cured. The first step is if we say dry enough to put a top coat on, I'll do a top coat the same day. I just, it doesn't have any wait time. Commercial milk paints, if you try to top coat them the same day, you can just basically strip the paint right back off. There's a lot of frustration. You can wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you still get an issue. The carbonization of lime, the carbonation, is going to take time that it turns to stone, but the binder that's gluing it to the wood is the casein. So as soon as the casein's dried, it's ready to top coat, it's cured. The carbonation of the lime has a curve. I've been working with a professor to try to map out the curves of the paint. It should occur very quickly for the paint because it's applied with water, which is necessary for the reaction. And it's just so thin, right? Paint is a very thin surface compared to mortar. So carbonation and curing into this stone should happen in days or weeks with calcitic lime. The magnesium content of dolomitic lime can take months or more. With a top coat interfering with the CO2 exchange, it can be roughly indefinite, practically very, very, very slow. It does not need to cure to function. It's basically, I actually prefer that it doesn't completely neutralize because of the antimicrobial properties. But for practical sense, as soon as it's dry, it's ready to use. It's not like linseed oil paint where you have to wait for days. You can sit on it the same day. You will not lose pigment. I mean, I'm not losing any pigment here, like it's dry. It's ready to use. You could sit on this already.
We have a question from Steve.
Henley's Book of Formulas, which goes back into the 1800s.
1807.
Mentioned if you want to take and make hide glue waterproof, you add albumin or egg whites to that process. Would that same process work with the paint?
It's possible. It's possible. An egg tempera, it's there. There's these arguments. There's also an argument I've seen and I've kind of experienced, but I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want to overpromise, that casein lime paint is fairly water resistant. I wash this stuff. I have the stool I showed that gets soaking wet. The paint has not noticed the water. So I think for an outdoor application, maybe the egg would give you an added level. My concern in general would be the effect of UV on the protein. I believe that the sunlight would break down your protein bonds faster than any protective coating could protect the rain. An oil finish can get destroyed by UV alone. The water won't do it. It's just, UV is potent stuff. Sunlight is destroying everything it can get in contact with. But it's an interesting question, and it's worth experimenting with. I would love to have everybody start experimenting with their own recipes and giving feedback.
On that point, it's absolutely true. The UV for when you use in wood protections, and people want a clear finish, the most natural finish, that is always the one that breaks down the first.
Yep, exactly.
If you have a pigment in those commercial wood finishes, then it lasts a hell of a lot longer.
Exactly. It's because the sunlight, the UV will break down the lignin in the wood and actually break the bond at a wood to finish level. You're right, the pigments defend the wood really well. The other note, which is quite positive for ochres, this is dirt. It will not fade in the sun. If you use an oxide, it's rust. You're going to fade rust. I mean, so that stuff is the UV rating, they're always described. Natural pigments are just awesome for using in full sun. So the fact that you can control that and say, instead of picking a synthetic yellow because it was slightly easier to get a blend for a paint company, I pick a highly UV resistant pigment. That's a great advantage. I actually got a third coat on and it dried again, so I can get a fourth coat on here. In the meantime, your first coat is thirsty and will take a lot of water in and will dry slow. Your second coat, less. Your third coat goes on so thin, which is why a pint doesn't feel like that much paint. But just to share my screen for a second, and then Paul, go ahead, please. I just wanted to say, I made these are 6 foot by 3 foot tables. I put 6 coats on because it's for like the roller rink or the ice rink for the kids. And I just wanted it to be bulletproof, and it's really knotty pine. I put 6 coats of paint on and still had to throw paint away. So it's 6 foot by 3 foot, that table. You can easily do an anarchist tool chest, whatever you've got. You're gonna have plenty of paint from a pint. I would never make a double batch by default. So.
Okay, the question which I was going to have was, also with a lot of things, end grain soaks in more.
Yep.
Do you do any preparation to seal it?
No. I mean, here, I'm just going to show, like, this is a beautiful color, to be honest. Somebody should make more of this. Oh man, actually, I love this color. All right, good. Got a new recipe. So, all right, hold on, just to show you 2 coats, 3 coats, 4 coats. I like to make a quadrant so that if I go 1 coat too far from what I actually loved, I know where to go back to. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want to do. That's a good idea. With end grain, I do paint on all the end grain pieces here. So I painted the end grain. There's no difference. The first coat soaks in different. The second coat, it's basically sealed. The third coat's paint on paint. So it doesn't know that it's behaving differently with the wood. You've got zero difference, much different than using a stain, for example. It's great. It also means painting over tear out. It sucks up the paint, of course, in the tear out. The second or third coat, you're fine. You won't notice it. If you have to sand something down because you made a mistake, just put 2 more coats on and it'll blend. This stuff is, it gets really strong coverage. So you might say, oh, that's too much coverage and I want to take a step back and only do 3 coats. You can do that for sure.
Thank you. And we've got another question from Anton.
Perfect.
I was just wondering how the color or the paint behaves with transitions between joints and stuff like this, because I use oil paint on wood mainly. Because it has got some kind of viscosity and tends to blend over the wood moving in joinery. How is it with this? Does it crack or?
It doesn't specifically crack. Let me find you the ugliest piece I've ever made. Here we go. All blends eventually lead to Forest Service brown, but there's some really bad dovetail. Oh, not that bad. Hey, no dovetail shaming yourself. There's some dovetails there. It's just a test board.
No reason to paint over these, no?
I paint all my dovetails because then you can feel them and really experience the craftsmanship. There's no cracking. It's not a film finish. It goes on thick, but it dries to be a cement, meaning it adheres to the wood stronger than it adheres to itself.
Also in the gaps, it looks like it penetrates quite well-ish.
Yep.
So it doesn't look like bad cracks like with plastic painting.
Exactly. It's each little particle is on its own. You know, it's very much like a you know, it's a lime wash that bonded with extra casein. So the casein does give it elasticity, but in general, you're not going to get flaking. That's the thing I hate so much is once a latex starts failing and it just sticks to itself and disappears.
Awful stuff.
It can't really do that. It doesn't understand. It doesn't play well with its neighbor, understanding it's supposed to all flake off.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't put it over a bad finish or you put it over an existing finish, it'll flake off. But Chester, please go ahead.
Sorry, Chester, you need to unmute.
I just wanted to hit on this before we get to an end, and we haven't mentioned it. Is I'd like to know more about your book,
sure.
and not only when it's going to be available, but also what does it cover, and will you be putting in there recipes for specific colors and that sort of thing, or just wanted to touch on your book, if you don't mind?
Sure. I love this because then I can advertise it. It's a pocket book. If you've got the Lost Art Press pocket books, it's something like this size. It's called a manageable read. I didn't want to cover the whole history of milk paint and 20 different topics. What I go into is exactly what we looked at today, but in a lot more structure, let's say, and it's as much detail as I can. So there's this recipe. This is the recipe. And I'm happy Chris has already shared it on his Substack for free because I just want people to have it. I want people to make the paint. The book, what I call kind of a useful part of it is if you believe in the paint and want to make it, but whoever shares your house with you doesn't believe in it, or a customer doesn't believe in it, there's a lot of good arguments in there for convincing somebody. So if you have to convince yourself, it's in there. If you have to convince someone else, it's in there. In terms of recipes, it's the standard recipe, and then a coverage of pigments and as much detail as I can go into without saying, oh, actually, you should get a book on pigments, there's a million good books on pigments. Or even worse, I can tell you exactly which pigments I love from Ochres de France, from other sources. I can't guarantee everybody has access to them. If you get a book on pigments, every book will tell you the chemistry of the pigment, the suspected behavior. I can tell you, I just mixed two wildly different chemical formulas, a natural and a synthetic, not necessarily violating rules, but there's no book that'll tell you what to do with that. You're safe to just experiment. The book explains to you the basics of color theory, the basics of using the pigments, but most of it is go to your local art supply shop, find some colors you like, get them and experiment, ask the employee at the store. You can get pigments from online retailers. They're pricey in the US, surprisingly, but they're quite good in Europe and UK. Real Milk Paint Company, for example, sells their pigments as just pigment. I've spoken with them. They're really nice people. They're good people. I don't want to put them out of business. I want to put, Sherwin-Williams out of business. They'll sell you their pigments directly. Those are lime paint approved pigments, and they're 1/16 the cost of their commercial paint. So when you're looking for what to do on pigments, my simple advice is get the colors you like and try them. I give some warnings. For example, if you want to get a specific color, you can use a color wheel. And they can be helpful to kind of tell you what happens if I mix orange plus blue, and it tells me I get something that I did not get. You know, I got green, so this wasn't right. The coloring power of the pigment will make the decision for you. We are not mixing pixels. And in the book, I cover it. But the structure of the book is a introduction to milk paint, why milk paint, arguments of why I believe it's superior. And then it's really focused on make it at home. Here's one recipe that I stand behind, not 4 or 5 different paint recipes to try. Do this and you will succeed. Techniques that you will succeed. And a lot of assuring people they'll be fine to just go and try it. I mean, look at this. This turned out just beautiful. I mean, it's a great color. You get good pigments. You mix it thick, and it's already. I could top coat this. It's dry enough to top coat already. So it's foolproof.
I actually like the shading there that you've developed. It would be interesting to do a test with that gradation on it.
You can do that as well. A follow-up coat, or yeah. So maybe Anton could speak to it. In lime washing, I think you do a lot of kind of there's really like a gradient as you lime wash. It's not always one really solid color, right?
But I don't do much colored lime washing.
Okay.
I mainly do basic white lime washing, just on the interior, some pigmented lime washing, and in the interior it's not on calcium based. It's on the interior we have loam.
Yep.
And loam plaster is also is it loam in English? Yeah. Loam?
Yeah, I believe so. Lime, yeah.
Lime.
Yep.
Loam is a type of soil.
Loam, yeah, type of soil.
Yeah.
And this reacts cloudy anyways, so whatever you do with it, so you have to live with cloudy walls, but in a good way.
Exactly. So it's just like you said, getting kind of a gradient, or honestly, what you can do is come back with kind of like kick a little more pigment, like a black or a white or a gray in, and do your last coat kind of really just aggressively and thin if you want to add a complete dynamic range to your paint, or just add a little darkening or lightening pigment and do a full coat, because when that first coat wears through, you have a gentle transition, not red-black, but green to there's so many effects you can do. You're in control.
Yeah, I like it enables you to do subtleties that I don't think that you can necessarily get without mixing color, particularly in vinyl paints but oil you can thin. But that's nice, very nice. Thank you, Nick.
Excellent. All right, who else has questions?
I think we've got to the end of the questions. So I'd like to say, Nick, thank you very much for actually coming on to Benchtop 101 to talk to us about the milk paint. And I wish you every success with the book, which is available in Lost Art Press.
Yes, available soon.
So I'd like to raise a glass to Have Some Friends, The Bench, and to Nick's book.
Nick,
thank you.
Yeah, Have Some Friends, The Bench, and the book.
Thank you guys.
Got a line.